Hello, so today's video is going to be about the stages of perfume collecting. I have been really witnessing my own journey through fragrance and many other creators here on YouTube, and I've just noticed some trends in the way people approach fragrance, and I think that would just be interesting to look at and to see whether it rings true with other people. Of course, not everybody's going to go through every single one of these stages, and some people might recognise this more than others. But it really is something that I've experienced and I feel like I see a lot on YouTube. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about fragrance. I talk about perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology, and I also just do straight perfume reviews and also fun perfume tags. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing. And please also press the like button if you do enjoy this kind of content. So being new to fragrance is super exciting, and I think in the short term it can lead to huge overspending and really a lot of purchasing in a very short period of time. And that is something that I think can lead to some regret. And so I've just thought, by highlighting these kinds of stages that I've recognised in my own perfume journey, it might be helpful to other people to try and avoid some of the pitfalls that I've experienced and that I've witnessed with other people, that might really help someone who's new to fragrance focus their efforts on what they're going to enjoy the most. So here we go. So stage one is curiosity, and there has to be some kind of trigger to make you interested in fragrance. So this could be perhaps your signature fragrance you find out is being discontinued. Perhaps someone gifts you a new fragrance and you suddenly want to find out more about that fragrance. Perhaps you tried something in store and it captured your imagination and you needed to know more about it. Perhaps you just search the internet and a video pops up. You're not even on YouTube. There's just something about a particular fragrance that's triggered some interest. So you start watching a bit of social media. You also, while searching the internet, you find out about these forums where people discuss fragrances. So perhaps you create a Fragrantica account, or you have a Base Notes account, or you're on Perfume. You really just discover there's a whole world of social media based around fragrances. You create a fragrance wardrobe. You don't have very many fragrances. Perhaps you have one, perhaps you have two. Perhaps you're normally a signature scent kind of person. And you look at that fragrance wardrobe and you just sort of start comparing with other people. Perhaps you discover some collection videos on YouTube, and you realise there are people out there with hundreds of bottles of perfume. You feel almost like there's something wrong with you. You feel like you should have more fragrance in your life, like this isn't a normal thing. The normality is that people have more than you. So really you start watching more social media, you perhaps read more of these platforms about fragrance, so perhaps you read a bit more Fragrantica, and you end up with a list of things that you are really interested in trying. It might just be a mental list, it might be a physical list, but you want to go into stores and try more fragrances. And in general, those fragrances are going to be designer fragrances, celebrity fragrances, things you can easily find in a store. This stage also represents a shift from you having one or two bottles of fragrance at a time, because you're not a wasteful person. You wouldn't want things to go off. So, you would use a fragrance bottle from beginning to end. But now you just think that maybe you need a fragrance for different seasons. This is maybe something you haven't thought about before. Also, it might represent a shift from other people buying you fragrances as gifts to you buying your own fragrances. Sometimes this kind of behavioural shift is associated with financial independence in your life. So it may have been that growing up you didn't have a lot of spare cash, and maybe you've got a good job now, and maybe you have money to spend on a potential hobby, and maybe fragrance is going to be it. Stage one can also be triggered by life events. So for example, you might be getting married and you might be looking for a fragrance for your wedding day. It's really the stage of curiosity and some kind of trigger to mean that you become interested, or perhaps more interested than you once were, in fragrance. Stage two, I'm going to term infatuation. So this is the stage at which you've bought something from a recommendation, perhaps a recommendation on social media or perhaps from one of these fragrance review sites. It was a success. You love it. And really, this has just triggered more interest. It's made you want to try more fragrances to grow your collection. It's at this stage you might also try blind buying. Blind buying might not be something you've ever considered before, and you've watched some social media and it just looks like a normality. It looks like something people just in general do. If they're doing it, why wouldn't you do it? You start to notice that particular fragrances are being raved about by particular channels, and you also notice that there seem to be rounds of videos about the same fragrances appearing at the same time. Of course, you're a bit green. You don't realise that there are fragrances being given out in PR at exactly the same time to a select group of influencers. It's just something that passes you by. And so you get sucked into trying those fragrances. Perhaps you even blind buy them. It's also at this point that you might find a particular scent profile that you really, really appreciate, and you end up kind of searching for the perfect fragrance within that scent profile. Perhaps it's a particular note that you really find you love. Perhaps it's something that you hadn't really known about before. You really begin to think, what have I been doing all my life? Why have I only got 1 or 2 bottles of perfume? You begin to believe that you need a fragrance collection in your life. Surely you need different fragrances for different seasons, for going to work, for going to weddings, for walking your dog, for going to the doctor. So really at this point you're watching a lot of fragrance YouTube, and you are also doing a lot of shopping from FragranceNet, JomaShop, Notino. These companies are getting a lot of your business. You start to realise that there's this whole other world of fragrance that you've never dipped your toe into. So your old world was called designer, and your new world is called niche. You firstly try out the big brands. You are maybe excited, you're maybe disappointed, you maybe fall in love with one. It's really at this point that you spend more than you were previously comfortable with spending on just one bottle of smelly water. But it doesn't stop there. Stage 3 is obsession. So at this stage, you've probably bought some kind of physical storage for your perfumes, or you've dedicated maybe a walk-in closet to your fragrances if you have one. So you've got shelves now, or you've got some kind of cabinet. And to begin with, it looked pretty empty, but now it's bowing and full. No matter how much you have, you now just want more. You begin to wonder whether it is fragrance or whether you have some kind of spending issue. Just why are all those bottles sprayed once or twice or left unloved in a drawer? Why does nothing seem to scratch that itch for more than a few minutes? Why are you on first name terms with your FedEx driver or your postie? You watch more content, hungry for more recommendations, and you always buy the biggest bottle because it's the best price per mil. It feels extortionate for the smaller sizes or for the travel sizes, and ultimately you believe you still need more than 10 mil. You end up trying Middle Eastern fragrances, and you actually don't just try one, you blind buy 10 because they're so affordable. Why wouldn't you? And according to all these influencers, they're amazing. Influencers tell you they improve with age, so you put them back in the box and hope that they will get better. At this point, you are buying so many fragrances that you can't open, try, wear and enjoy them all before a new fragrance comes into your life. You begin to feel regret over the growing pile of fragrances really that you hardly wear. You end up making a pact with yourself to stop buying and to go on a low buy or perhaps a no buy, but then you see a sale offer. You see something that's just too good to resist on something you've been wanting for a while, and you end up caving. Your no buy doesn't last long and you end up buying more. Stage 4 is realisation. So stage 4 is really when you realise that you've only got one body, there's only so much time, there are only so many days in a year, there are only so many fragrances you can end up wearing, and you begin to just become more realistic about how many fragrances you need in your life and how many fragrances you truly love. You begin to start critically analysing your collection. You think about which fragrances you reach for the most and which fragrances are most appropriate for the situations you find yourself in. You begin to realise that maybe Amouage's guidance for work is perhaps a bit much. You begin to notice that perhaps some of your more affordable fragrances have the biggest dents in them. You start to rearrange your collection in your fragrance wardrobe. You start to arrange your fragrances by feeling or by season or by situation rather than by house. You also begin to sample rather than blind buy. Essentially, at this stage, you are still buying bottles, but you are reselling and also gifting away fragrances that you don't love or you don't reach for. You also start to get more of a thrill from buying a sample set than you do from buying a full bottle. And you also begin to value scents that provoke emotional responses in you. Those are the fragrances that you want in your life. You also, at this stage, begin to meet fellow fragrance enthusiasts. So perhaps you join a Facebook group or an Instagram group, and maybe you even start to post about the fragrances and your experiences with fragrances in your life. You just feel you want to share with other people who understand your passion. No one you know in real life is as into fragrance as you are, and you are just so happy to have found your people. These new fragrance friends are incredibly kind, and they send you things you've never dreamt of. They send you things that you've never heard of, and they introduce you to a new world of fragrance. And that world is indie. And you begin to realise that YouTube and other platforms of social media rarely mention indie fragrances. With discovering the new world of indie fragrances, this time around with your obsession, you are sensible. You really wholeheartedly sample those fragrances. You don't blind buy bottles. You know that is now just way too risky because you've developed your taste. You know what you like, you know what you dislike. And ultimately, you know that indie is where it's at with invention. You know you are going to find your most exciting experiences in the world of independent perfumery. And you sample and buy with love, care and attention. These are some of your best purchases. Stage 5 is curation. This is the point at which you know your taste, you know what you like, and really reselling outweighs buying. It's at this stage you learn to let go and you realise the joy of having a collection of fragrances that you love. You now rarely blind buy, but when you do, your hit rate is higher because you know more about perfumery, you know more about the perfumers that you prefer, you know more about the brands you prefer, and you know about the scent profiles you prefer. You just are armed with more knowledge, and that means that your hit rate is going to be higher. Sampling, though, is still your favourite thing, and you spend the majority of your money on buying samples. But before buying a bottle, you finish every last drop of that sample. You also notice a shift in the shape of your collection. So whereas before your collection was full of 100ml bottles, it's now full of travel sizes and decants. It now seems mad to you to buy a 100ml bottle when you could have 5 or 10 travel sprays. At this point, you begin to realise other people's behaviours. You begin to notice when people are in stages 2 and 3, particularly, especially on social media. You really want to reach out and help people and give them advice, but you kind of know that people need to work their own way through those stages and to experience those feelings that you've already had. You also begin to see through a lot of social media. You begin to see that a lot of social media is people trying to sell you fragrances, and really even fragrances that these people didn't buy themselves. You also begin to notice language on social media. So people saying things like, you need this. And when you check the description box, you also notice affiliate links. You either begin to curate your watch list or perhaps take people's advice with a pinch of salt. So there you go, those are my 5 stages of perfume collecting. I really do feel like I've exaggerated them all to some extent, but I really do also feel like I've been through all of these stages myself. So please do let me know if you've experienced these stages yourself, or whether you've had similar experiences to me, or whether you think there are completely different stages to perfume collecting. I'd be really interested to know. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.